Hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today in another episode of the MBA Spotlight by the GMAT Club. And over the course of next 3 weeks, we are going to have schools, the top 25 MBA schools of the world, join us to answer your questions and queries that you have around the MBA application and the B School experience. And jumping back to today's session, we have Diana as well as Thea, who's on the back end from the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, to take you over the Ross School of Business, the MBA application, and the B School experience for Ross. Diana, over to you if you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Bob, and hello, everyone. It's so great to see you. It is beautiful here in Ann Arbor today, and I hope that you are well, that your families are healthy. I know it has been quite a challenging year, but I do hope that everybody is safe and well. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about Michigan Ross. I'm the director of full-time MBA admissions, but I'm also an alum of the full-time MBA program. And so I remember what it was like being in your shoes as you're trying to figure out what you're trying to get out of the MBA experience, which program's going to be right for you, and where you're going to find your fit and really thrive, not just for the 2 years you're in school, but for the lifelong relationship that you have with any MBA program that you join. And so today I've prepared for you some information that I think shares some of the highlights of Michigan Ross that kind of gets us started. But importantly, I'm very excited to answer any questions that you may have so that you can get the information you need to be the most successful. And with that, it looks like you've got my slides up here, so we'll go ahead and get started. So to start with, if you learn best by doing, Michigan Ross is the place for you to be. We have more hands-on learning experiences and opportunities than any other school. And we do that because we think you learn more from learning by doing and actually trying something new, potentially failing, learning from your mistakes, having a supportive community around you to help build you up and get the experiences that you need and that you will apply going forward. So where possible, we're going to try to incorporate hands-on learning in our curriculum. University of Michigan has nearly 100 graduate programs ranked in the top 10. And one of the cool things about being a part of Michigan Ross is that you have access to the broader University of Michigan, whether it's public policy or sustainability, school of information, public health, or engineering. You have an opportunity as part of your MBA to take classes that are world-class as part of the University of Michigan with students who are coming from all over the world to study in Ann Arbor. Speaking of all over the world, our alumni are all over the world, a gigantic alumni base, and they're very passionate about the University of Michigan. So one of the things you can expect when you graduate from Michigan Ross is that you are going to feel this connectivity to anybody who's graduated from any of these top programs at the University of Michigan. Anytime somebody says go blue and where's the block M, you'll know it, and they're willing to pick up the phone and connect and engage with you. And our alums are very well placed all over the world. It's not just the number of alumni that we have, though, it's how effective our alumni are. And time again, Michigan Ross is ranked very highly in alumni effectiveness. What this means is essentially alumni will engage. They will pick up the phone. They are supportive of our students and beyond, right? Think about all the different jobs you might have along the way and how you're going to leverage that network throughout your experience. This is an incredibly passionate, engaged, and supportive alumni network. And then there's probably many of you out there that are thinking, I'm looking to switch my career. Maybe it's function, maybe it's industry, maybe it's both. Well, our students find a lot of success in their career search. And a big part of that is hands-on learning. They get a chance to practice their future career pursuits while they're with us at Michigan Ross. So we talked about hands-on learning. This is the foundation for our educational opportunities at Michigan Ross. One thing I will mention is It doesn't mean that every class is taught in a hands-on way. It means where possible, we're going to try to incorporate hands-on learning. If you take a look at the core classes that you're taking in your first year, that's going to be about 60% case study, actually. And so you might be looking at some schools that are more like 100% case study. And while we like case study, we don't leverage it 100% of the time because we think there's various ways to teach the material that's going to make most sense for that material on that day. Could be case, could be live lecture, it could be a group project, it could be a simulation, it could be a guest speaker, a lot of different ways that you'll be able to learn and engage at Michigan Ross. And the last quarter of your first year, after you've taken most of your core classes, you're going to be doing a full-time consulting engagement for 7 weeks. It's the longest and deepest hands-on learning experience you can get at a top business school. And there are about 100 projects for you to choose from. You rank the projects that are of most interest to you, and we run an algorithm that targets student preference. So most people get on one of their top 5 projects that they've ranked. These could be with big tech companies, they could be with startups, they could be with impact-focused organizations around the world. And you are going to be working on a team of 4 to 6 to add value to that company. The easiest way to talk about MAP is like a consulting engagement, but even for those of you that aren't in consulting, there's so much more to MAP projects than just an advisory experience. You're really going to get in the weeds with a real company doing something really important for that company. And 90+% of our teams present to executive level sponsors. So these aren't just a nice little project, student project that people are doing on the side. This is a substantial 7-week experience that complements a 10 to 12-week internship that you're going to have. So a lot of the times our students will put MAP on their resumes. They very much think of it as a second internship. Again, a big reason that our students are successful in their career search because they've had such a substantial experience in addition to their internship to build from. I also want to mention that we have more student-led venture capital funds than any other school. These are just a few of them. Our Wolverine Venture Fund, that's a more traditional venture capital fund, or our Social Venture Fund that's looking to invest in companies that are going to have both a social and economic return. Commercialization Fund, which is for early stage companies, a real estate investment fund, and our International Investment Fund that invests in small, medium enterprises in emerging markets. Again, a great opportunity for you to really get in the weeds and really be making these investments with the guidance of faculty who are going to be there to help you learn how to make great decisions in terms of your investments. But you as the student team actually get to make the investments. One of the things that I'm sure you're looking for as you look at MBA programs is you are looking for great career outcomes. And one of the things we say is go blue and go anywhere. Probably the biggest misconception about Michigan Ross is that you would somehow be geographically limited in your post-MBA location, and nothing could be further from the truth. You see here about 18% of our class goes to Chicago. That's the top metro, but that of course means over 80% is going someplace that's not Chicago. It goes to the coast, goes internationally. We have people all over the US and internationally with their post-MBA locations. And of course, you'll see some of our top companies that are listed there. This past year, about 70% of our students went into tech or consulting. Don't worry if you're not interested in tech or consulting. We have really strong ties to Wall Street, to marketing, CPG companies, you name it, startups and more that our students are going into. One of the reasons our students are as successful is because we have this dedicated and supportive alumni base. Over 52,000 Ross alumni all over the world. But what's really awesome about being a part of the Ross network is that you are going to have access to tuition-free executive education courses for life. These are like $10,000 courses and everything from digital marketing to how to lead in challenging times. So think about a few years after business school when you're going from managing a team of 5 to managing a team of 20. What are the skills that you need to retool at that time? And what opportunities are you going to seek? And Michigan Ross is going to be that education partner with you, not just during your 2 years at school, but for life. We also have entrepreneurial advising as well as a dedicated alumni career support advisor for all of those times when you're looking to pivot throughout your career and you need somebody to look at your resume or to help you structure your next step in your job search. We're going to be there with you. So this past year, we weren't able to have as many people to Ann Arbor as I wish we could have, because Ann Arbor is really incredible. Some of the things that you'll see here in terms of it being the most educated or the #1 city for female founders raising their first round. Some of the pictures that you see here are some of the great places that you can get a chance to go out and experience. In fact, Main Street, where we have lots of great restaurants, cultural, ethnic cuisines from around the world, we have actually blocked off those streets right now so that there's even more seating outside, more walkable areas for students to engage, connect, and meet with one another. Most people aren't from Ann Arbor, so they're coming from around the globe to Ann Arbor. And what they find is we're only 20 minutes from a major international airport. And Ann Arbor itself attracts a really world-class set of talent to its variety of graduate programs, the professors, and others who are part of this community and experience. It really is a great, great place to go to graduate school. It's a great place for partners, for those of you who have a partner, because the partners are very actively engaged in the experience and in the community. A lot of good culture, a lot of good restaurants, a lot of good music and art, and of course, lots of great sports as well, if that's something you're interested in. So let's talk a little bit about the admissions process. This is just some of the high-level overview of some of the elements of the admissions process that are maybe slightly differentiated from some of our peer schools. So I want to highlight them a little bit. To start with, and maybe this isn't fully differentiated, there are a few other schools that only require one letter of recommendation. But we have one letter of recommendation because we think there's one person who knows you pretty well, and maybe a second person who knows you kind of well, right? And so what we're looking for is for you to choose that person who can give us the professional context of who you are. We're looking for somebody who can share in an objective capacity, so not typically a peer. If you're not going to tell your supervisor that you're applying to business school, that's okay. Is there somebody else who's been in a supervisory capacity or otherwise an objective capacity to evaluate your work? Maybe it's a former supervisor. Maybe it's a client. Those would all be suitable examples for who your recommender could be. We do use a common letter of recommendation that is provided by GMAT, the people who put out the GMAT. And so that recommendation letter can be found online. There's no surprises. Essentially, we're asking your recommender, how do you know this candidate? In what capacity? What do they do well? What are some areas for improvement? That's the bulk of that recommendation letter. So start thinking now about who your recommender could be and start to build that relationship further with that recommender such that you feel that they could be a good advocate for you in this process. Our short answer essays stay the same this year as they did last year. So there's a few different essays. One is a career-focused essay that asks you about your short-term career goals. The reason we ask you for your short-term career goal and not longer than that is not because we don't want to know more about what your long-term plans are, but we recognize that it may change with the toolkit that you're going to get in business school and with deeper understanding of who you are, how you thrive, and where you might want to work after. Plus, internship recruiting starts really early on. In fact, we're already working pretty heavily with our students who haven't set foot in Ann Arbor and won't until this August on what their internship search might look like so that we can work with them to prepare. We also have short answer essays that are going to ask you things about, I knew I was different when, or I was out of my comfort zone when. My best piece of advice for those is to think about your application as a whole and how your answers to those questions complement the other parts of the application. It's okay to share something personal that we might not otherwise know about you, or a work story that perhaps didn't appear on your resume or maybe isn't as in-depth through a recommendation letter. This is your chance to have some choice to tell us what you want us to know about you. The last thing I will mention is that we do have a test waiver request process this year. This will open up in July when we open up our application. And the reason that we've offered the test waiver is that we heard from many, many students this past year, prospective students that said, it's difficult for me to be able to take the test effectively at home. either my Wi-Fi connection isn't as thoughtful or thorough as it could be, or maybe I'm in a situation at home that's not as conducive to a test-taking environment. So we hear you, and we recognize that, and we, if that is true for you, then you are eligible to take care of that waiver. You'll see the waiver form will ask for other pieces of evidence that may help us get confidence in your ability to be successful in an academically and quantitatively rigorous environment. We still need to know that you're going to be successful. So this isn't just one of those instances where it's, I don't take tests well, and so maybe maybe I should do a test waiver. The test is 85% of the class does have the test, this incoming class. About 15% were on a waiver. And so if you can't take the test, we're human and we recognize that. And so we'll take a look at the rationale through the waiver process. If you can, it's possible that the test could help your candidacy and strengthen it. So if we don't have it, we are going to evaluate your candidacy accordingly, and we're going to have the other pieces, and it's not going to hurt your candidacy. It's just going to be a part of your candidacy that we're aware of, that we know that you weren't able to take the test and received a waiver. And for those of you that are able to take the test, it's just an additional data point for us as we're evaluating your candidacy. With that in mind, I will stop sharing my slides to allow all of you to ask whatever questions that you have. Vaibhav?
Hi, Diana. Thank you for that. I think that was really informative, and a lot of questions have already been answered by Taya in the background. So thank you so much, Taya, for that. Before we get into questions, right, please feel free to type in all questions that you have. We do have the Michigan Ross Zoom breakout session at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're not able to get your questions answered in this session, you'll definitely get your questions answered in that session, right? So before we move to the chat questions, we did have some pre-submitted questions, and
Sure.
we can start with those, Diana. So
Great.
the first question is around the waitlisting and denial. And if you can just talk about who exactly is a reapplicant, and what sort of things does a reapplicant need to consider while they're applying again to Michigan Ross?
It's a great question. And I will tell you that when I look back at some of our students who've been really successful, they got in the second time around, right? Or maybe they got in late off of the wait list. And I think sometimes it can really weigh on candidates if they didn't get in the first time. And the first thing I want to tell you is, have confidence in yourself. We let reapplicants in all the time. And I think second time around, sometimes people really strengthen that application. What I end up finding when I talk to reapplicants is like 98% of the time, they have a good sense for why they didn't get admitted, and have a good self-awareness around the parts of their application to strengthen. The way that our reapplication process works is, first and foremost, there's no additional fee to reapply. So that's good news. You've already paid the application fee. You don't have to pay it a second time around. And our essays are the same. So you don't actually have to complete the essays. The biggest part is a statement from you around what we need to know about you since you last applied. So this is really an open-ended opportunity for you to tell us, here's what I've done to strengthen my candidacy since. Maybe here's some elements that differentiate me or define who I am. It's your introductory opportunity, or reintroductory, I guess, opportunity to tell us about you. We will be doing a webinar this July that Taya can put in the chat, that is specific for reapplicants, where we'll go into more depth, or we'll talk to you guys about some tips and tricks. We might have with us a reapplicant, a current student, who can give you their perspective as well on what they did to strengthen their application the second time around. So it's not a negative indicator by any means. Please don't inform yourself of like, oh gosh, I'm only I'm a reapplicant. It's okay. We're excited to get to know you again, and hope that you're able to share more with us this time around.
Awesome, awesome. Sounds awesome. So the next question that we have is around the STEM designation of Michigan Ross MBA. So if you can just talk a little about that.
Yeah, so we have a STEM specialization in management science that Taya can share in the chat. So that one is indeed STEM certified, and we are looking into pursuing additional options. But for right now, that's the one that is STEM certified. And what you'll find when you open up that link and you take a look at the courses that are part of the course set that you can select in order to do that specialization, I think many of you will look at those courses and say, there are a lot of courses here that I was going to take anyways, right? And so they're very popular electives. They're very popular courses. They're data and analytics focused. They're essentially getting you to the skill set that is perhaps the most desired amongst all of our employers. So, I would say I think it's a very favorable opportunity. So even though, yes, so many of you that are pursuing STEM, you maybe see it as a requirement because you want that for extended OPT. We understand, but hopefully you won't see it as burdensome. I don't think it is, and I don't think our students see it that way either because, like I said, of the choice, the selection, the opportunities that you have within. I should mention that your second year at Michigan Ross is almost entirely electives. You get to choose which courses you want to take. So we do have some specializations, or this STEM is one of them. We have a data and business analytics concentration. We have healthcare, real estate, a variety of opportunities to specialize while you're at Ross. And while you may choose to take those specializations, you may also say, the courses that make most sense for me, given where I'm coming from and where I want to go, are these ones. And our academic advisors, our career office, our student clubs, our alumni, we have a lot of guidance around if you're interested in going to this career path, here's some courses you may choose to take. And then you have the option to take those courses if you wish, or to take some of them and not all of them, because again, maybe you come with a background in that. And instead of taking those courses, you want to take some of these others in management and organizations or strategy, variety of classes. Our electives are really awesome. There's a lot to choose from at Michigan Ross.
Right, right. Thank you. The next question is around the professional support and the career support for internship opportunities, but I'll extend this question a little, and if you can talk about the full-time opportunities as well.
Yes, of course. This is huge. This is, I imagine, one of the main reasons you all are looking at business school right now. So let me give you some in-depth context, because this is happening real time right now with our incoming students. So for our students who are starting this fall, even for some of them before they even put their deposit down at Michigan Ross, we are already working with them on their career plan. Okay. And so let me give you some examples of some elements of that. We actually have a career course that people take over the summer that is a mix of self-reflection as well as understanding the career landscape. What are the tools that we have to help you research different industries and companies? What are some things you should be thinking about? What's the timeline that you should be looking at? We do a lot of that over the summer so that you can absorb. It takes a little while to say, okay, what's my plan? So one of the things I really like that we start off with is something that's called Career Leader. Career Leader is an assessment that you'll go through that's going to ask you a series of things. Would you rather be a race car driver or an accountant? Well, the answer is you're probably not looking to go into necessarily either of those fields, but it's going to help assess your risk profile or various things, and it's going to match you at the end to various career paths. So, you'll see that you have a 90+% match with, career path A or B or C. Once you get those matches, there's an opportunity to dive a little deeper, to click on those things to say, well, what does day-to-day look like here? What does it mean to be in venture capital? I don't understand exactly what this field does. So you get a chance to research and explore, and then you're going to have an appointment with one of our career coaches. And their first question to you is going to be, what'd you think of the results? What surprised you? Did it align with what you thought and what your research suggested when you were applying to programs? And you're going to work on an initial path. Okay, it sounds like this is the path that you're looking to start with. There's going to be an opportunity to go through webinars and listen to alumni, a day in the life of an investment banker or a product manager. You're going to get lots of resources over the summer. And the reason for that is when you start school, you join something called a FACT group, Functional Accountability Career Team. Our students love FACT groups. And what these are is they're led by over 80 peer career coaches. These are student career coaches, MBA 2s, who were successful in their career search. And let me say this, there's probably 20 or 30 different types of FACT groups that you could join. So not just consulting, there's even specializations like tech consulting, or you could join a strategy consulting one. They're going to be very specialized, because that fact group led by that MBA 2 who successfully recruited is going to walk you through the equivalent of a curriculum that's designed to help you prepare and recruit for your desired field of interest. That curriculum is a partnership between our career office, the career clubs, the consulting club, the tech club, as well as the companies, where we're putting all of that together to say what is needed and by when to get somebody ready to interview. The timelines are going to be different. The interview style is going to be different. Maybe the way that you network with the firms is going to be a little bit different. We're going to walk you through that process. One thing I should mention is we actually have a professional career coach who is specifically dedicated to international students. That is, her whole job is to work with international students on some of the nuances of the search process. The professional clubs are also going to support you along the way. So think about on a Sunday, you might have the consulting club give an education session that's going to help you understand the landscape of what all the consulting firms do, who's doing what, who specializes in what, are they hiring generalists, are they hiring specialists, and what's the process. That might be an education session on a Sunday. And in your fact group that week, you might be practicing networking, right? Because you've just learned about all these different types of companies. Now, how are you going to approach and actually execute on your networking? So again, this fact group is going to walk through a curriculum that's focused on your career search. So that's a huge, huge asset for our students. And then we find that our students are highly successful in their search. They really are. We end up getting great, great companies, desirable places that people want to work. And of course, you have your MAP project as well to deep dive a little further in an area that could be of interest to you.
Awesome. Awesome. The next question is something that's really personal to me. So, I'd be prioritizing this question. So if you can talk about the underrepresented groups at Ross and diversity and inclusion and the affinity groups at Ross, if you can shed some light on that.
Yes, absolutely. This is something that I'm very passionate about, that our team's very passionate about, that our community is really passionate about, this idea of really creating an inclusive community and environment. This is not just for the students, but I would say the faculty and staff. I'm going through an unconscious bias training right now. It's something that actually our team thinks about in terms of our own biases as it goes into the admissions process, that we're regularly challenging ourselves and making sure that we keep our own biases in check. Our students have a very broad allyship training that we have been working with our diversity, equity, and inclusion team at Ross to expand allyship training. Our orientation is heavily focused on some of these elements as well. One thing I'll mention is this has actually been central to who we are for a very long time. This isn't something that's maybe reactive or responsive to things over the course of the last year or two. That said, we do come together as a community regularly to talk about variety of things that are happening in the world, how it impacts our student community, how it impacts business. To give some context or just something to think about when you think about the mix of people at the school. One, we have over 200 student ambassadors listed on our website. The reason we have over 200 student ambassadors is because we recognize that there's different parts of your identity that you're going to want to understand how that comes to life at Michigan Ross. So you might want to talk to somebody who is from a similar country, or is part of a club that you want to be a part of, or is shares a career interest. Right. So if you did nothing other than read the bios of the student ambassadors, you'd get a really great idea of who's at Michigan Ross. But my number one piece of advice is to reach out to a student ambassador, get your questions answered, ask them about life in Ann Arbor, ask them about how they feel included in the classroom and the community, what kinds of things that they're getting involved in. One thing I'll mention to you is that we are the largest consortium school. So for those of you who are, this is for U.S. and permanent residents only, but who are looking to apply to business school through the consortium is an organization that promotes underrepresented minorities in business. And so there is a standard application through which you apply and can apply to up to 6 consortium member schools, of which Michigan Ross is one of them. I will mention that our last 9 student body presidents are from the consortium. The last 3 are Black women. 9 of our 10 section leaders between MBA 1s and 2s are women. So, and some of the biggest clubs are led by underrepresented students, whether it's the consulting club, whether it's, others, right? So there are a lot of opportunities for our students to thrive, but I would love for you to talk directly to the students so that you get that firsthand experience of what the experience at Michigan Ross is all about. But we continue to learn, to grow, and we have inclusion representatives in each of the sections. Any of our clubs have inclusion officers as well, for the purpose of making sure the work that they're doing is inclusive. So we're excited to get to know all of you more and how you would contribute to our unique community.
Awesome, awesome. And one question that has come up in the chat quite often and has been answered by Taya as well, but just to get your take on that, if you can talk a little about the GMAT waiver, how is it viewed, and how is it approved if an applicant submits a GMAT waiver request?
Yeah, we still need to know that you are going to be able to handle the academic curriculum, right? So to give you some context, if you didn't waive out of any classes, and you can waive out of some core classes if you have some background or experience, but if you didn't waive out of any in your first quarter, you would be taking statistics, economics, strategy, and accounting at the same point that you're moving to a new place, meeting new people, getting your career search ready, and taking on, maybe various clubs or leadership roles, being a part of one of our venture capital funds that I mentioned. It's a lot. And so we still need to make sure that you can handle not just the rigor of those courses themselves, but the fullness of all those things that you're going to be doing in your first year. And so I mentioned that to say, if the test is something that you can take and you feel like you can take successfully, and you feel like it will help us better understand who you're likely to be in the classroom, because maybe you don't have some of the other elements to share with us, then consider taking the test. We recognize that, as I mentioned, some of you might not be well positioned to do so. But I think you need to assess for yourself, am I well positioned to be able to do so or not? And if I am well positioned to do so, how can I perform my best, and at which test? You can take the GMAT or the GRE. Either one is okay with us if you do choose to take that test. As I mentioned, about 10 to 15% of this incoming class is coming in with a test waiver, and they were able to demonstrate to us other elements, whether it was their academic experience, whether it was their professional work experience, things that would give us confidence that they're likely to be successful in the classroom. So you've got to assess that for yourself. There's no if this, then do this, take this action. And you've got to assess that for where you're at.
Right, right. The next question that we have is around fit. So fit is a criteria that is used by B schools as well as applicants to determine whether you are a good fit for the school or if the school is a good fit for you. So how do you define fit at Ross and fit for Ross?
It's a good question. I mentioned earlier, we were talking, if you learn best by doing, this is a great place to be. And I will tell you that if you learn by doing, it's going to mean that you're going to be stepping outside your comfort zone. It's going to mean that you're going to be, other people around you are going to be stepping outside their comfort zone. And you need to be there to support that, right? And so learning by doing requires that you're going to deal with a level of ambiguity. You're going to be taking on new things and new challenges that hopefully are going to set you up for the future. For those of you that are looking to go into tech, if you start school, fall of 22, you're going to graduate in fall of 24 into jobs that don't exist today. They don't exist right now, right? So you need an MBA that's going to push you to be flexible, to adapt, to figure out how to ask the right questions, and to be able to add value when you might not know all the answers. How are you going to get there? Our courses are going to set you up for that. MAP is certainly going to help set you up for that, because you get to pick the MAP project. So it might be in a company or an organization that you've never worked with, in a country that you're not as familiar with a team of people, fellow MBA students who are perhaps coming from all over the world and all different backgrounds. How are you going to come together with your faculty advisors who are going to give you some advice from time to time, or maybe help challenge some of your assumptions, help ask questions? But you're really driving that project with senior level executives at major companies. That's a big challenge, but a really exciting one that Michigan Ross uniquely offers to that extent. 7 full weeks. You're not doing anything else other than taking on a MAP project. I mention all of that around fit to say there are other schools where you don't have to take as many risks or you don't have to push yourself as far, and that in and of itself is an assessment of your own fit. Where are you looking? How are you looking to grow? Who are the people that you want around you when you're growing? I'll go back to that 200 plus student ambassadors. Find your fit, right? When you're talking to student ambassadors, whether it's at Michigan Ross or other places, you're not only writing down on your spreadsheet, if that's what you're keeping, what you heard and if they have the entrepreneurship program that you're looking for and what kind of healthcare classes they have. You're also needing to keep track of, were you energized by that conversation? Would you want to talk to more people after, or are you just talking to somebody because you feel like you have to, because you're assessing your options and you feel like you need to talk to someone? You're going to know there's going to be a difference when you talk to different people. Keep tabs on that, because you're going to probably change even how you think about fit through this process, because you're going to get into places and then you're going to think differently. Okay, now I've got to think about either I have a scholarship, I don't have a scholarship, I've got to be moving to a different location, I have a partner. All of those things are going to be very important and they may evolve as you go through your process. So do keep good track of not only what you're hearing, but the way that you're responding or how you're feeling about what you're hearing, because that's going to help you assess fit.
Right, right. And since you talked about map, right, I think there's a great deal of enthusiasm among our audience regarding map. We have some great comments coming around map as to how it sounds really exciting for all the prospective applicants. Yes. So moving on, a very classic question that usually comes: advantages versus disadvantages of applying in round one or round two or round three in terms of the admission chances or in terms of the scholarships that are being offered. If you can talk a little about that.
It's a good question. And I'm glad it says specifically round one or round two. When we talk about round one, we're talking about September. When we talk about round two, we're talking about early January. Either of those rounds are completely fine. And in fact, we know that candidates are going to apply heavily across both of those rounds. So it doesn't make sense for us as an admissions team to go too hard in round one, pick up too many candidates, give out too many scholarship dollars, and then not be able to get maybe some great candidates from round two. Okay, so we have a lot of data over a lot of years that helps us understand kind of what the patterns are likely to be from applicant behavior. So between rounds one and two, I would apply when you think your application is at its strongest. Just so you know what happens across the rounds. Well, let me back up and say this. Rounds three, like a little bit later, so now you're talking about schools that have application rounds in March or April. That's a little late. At that point, you've had people from rounds one and two largely accept or not accept your offers. And so there are slightly fewer options a little bit later in the year. And as an international student, let's say, it's less time to get your visa too. So we let people in the later rounds all the time. We wouldn't have them if we weren't going to admit people that late. We also save some spots there too. It's just a smaller number. So if you can apply by rounds one or two, that's the best. Something to keep in mind as you figure out which schools you're going to apply to and which rounds. Okay, if you apply to a school in, let's say, September, you're going to find out in December that you were admitted. And you probably have to put down a pretty substantial deposit by February. And I mean like probably $2,000 or so by February. If you apply to schools in round two, so you apply in January, you're not even going to find out that you've been admitted until March. So your round one school is going to need that $2,000 from you before you hear back from your round two schools. So I would consider applying to the schools that you plan to apply to in the same round so that you have a similar decision time set to be able to make that choice with comparing all available options. Now, you might get waitlisted. And if you get waitlisted, you actually get evaluated in the subsequent round. So if you apply in round one, you get evaluated again in round two. If you apply in round two, you get evaluated again in round three. And so that would be the one caveat. You won't find out on the same timeline if you're waitlisted, of course. But all things being equal, applying in the same round is a good idea. So you don't have to put down $2,000 just to wait for your option to hear back from your round two schools.
Right, right. Awesome. And there was this one question that came up on chat, and I cannot find that question now, but that was a question from an Indian military veteran. And
Okay.
basically his question was around, what sort of opportunities are available at Ross for veterans, US veterans or international veterans? And basically, how is that work experience looked into while evaluation of applications?
Yeah, we have a lot of people who come from, I would call it service corps backgrounds. So whether it's military backgrounds, whether it's Peace Corps, whether it's Teach for America or Teach for India, all of the different programs that have some element of service to them. And so that's pretty common at Michigan Ross, I think, in large part because of our pay it forward community and mentality, where it's very, very community oriented. People are very much supporting one another in their pursuits. And I would say that our candidates from military backgrounds end up doing very well because some of the complexity that you've had to navigate in your professional career, that is highly attractive to a lot of companies as long as you're able to translate those experiences. I say that to mean, our Armed Forces Association actually works a lot with veteran applicants, military applicants, because you are having to translate what could be, running 300 troops on this aircraft carrier over here, and how does that translate to perhaps your pursuit of going into finance? So they will work closely with prospective applicants. So I encourage you to reach out to somebody from the Armed Forces Association. We will also have a military preview day. We have a really cool event that I love that's called Vet X, and our veterans share through storytelling some of their experiences. We do a lot of storytelling as a means of harnessing your own narrative and growing and developing as a leader, whether it's our veterans, our coming out week stories that our LGBTQ plus group does, Story Lab, which is an opportunity for students to share their stories, Food Friends and Culture, where different groups from different cultures will share their upbringing and how that translates to their views on how they see the world or their transition to the US. So I mentioned all of that to say everybody has a place, right? And so I think finding the place where you feel like you can be your authentic self is going to be important. And then, like I said, translating those experiences, picking out the transferable skills and trying to identify those is going to be helpful. And our students are good there as well.
Right, right. And the next question is around MAP. Right. What sort of experience do students get? Is it hands-on experience in multiple streams or a single stream? And there was another question to around MAP as well, which I'll take up together, right? Which was basically, does MAP lead to full-time opportunities with the clients that the students are working for?
Yeah, it's a good question. MAP teams are working on substantial work product, like things that are actually in the marketplace right now. Some of our MAP teams were the precursor to assessing some of those opportunities. So a MAP team might be assessing, we have this product, which market should we enter and why, and with which features of this product should we enter that market, let's say. My MAP project was actually in India, and we were taking a look at the vocational training system in India, trying to figure out how the public and private sectors could come together to strengthen the vocational training system so that multinational corporations would want to locate their businesses there, knowing that they would have a trained workforce. So we went to India and we were working with McKinsey. We were working with the World Bank. We were working with the public sector. We were working with the private sector to try to understand what was a pretty big challenge. Most MAP projects are a little bit more discreet than mine was. Mine was like, we have to, a 10-year runway where we're trying to get this many more people employed or this many more companies to come so that, to develop the economic viability that we're looking for. But a lot of them could be, what do you, should we enter these new markets or should we adapt this product in these ways? So they can be with big tech companies. They could be with like treasury departments. Like some of the companies will say, what kind of product mix should we have? Like where should we, based on exchange rates across the different countries, where should we be manufacturing these different products to develop a cost optimization? Or, how can we help this hospital, that's a public hospital, develop more private funding models to be able to be more sustainable? Really, truly depends. I mean, very big, broad range of projects. Taya can put our MAP projects and testimonials out if she hasn't already, so that you can filter by where the projects are, what kinds of things the teams are doing, and get a better understanding. Asking our students or alums about MAP is a great question because they've all done it and they've all had pretty substantial experiences doing it. So did I answer all of your questions there, Vaibhav?
Yes, yes, definitely. I think you covered everything. And we'll just take one of our last questions because we're almost on time. So,
Okay.
question around how to show career transition if you basically want to transition in your career, right? The example here being from an institutional banking role to, let's say, an IBP or VC. How do you reflect that in your application? What sort of an experience do you need to show before you're making the transition?
Yeah, I think there's just a level of awareness of what that future path is and why it's the best fit for you. I saw the mention of us being a consulting school. I mean, consulting is the top destination, but I would say we're really strong across many different disciplines. In fact, if you take a look at Wall Street, you take a look at how many Michigan and Michigan Ross people are there, it's very high. The number of MBAs, for example, going into banking is slightly less, but our number of undergraduate students going into financial services, private equity is very high. So you are going to hear people say go blue throughout Wall Street. I mean, all the time. I mean, we're really stacked there, and all the top banks really recruit at Michigan Ross for the most part. So, you know, um, for your particular situation or as you're developing your career story and your narrative, I think it's going to be important for you to just understand, why is this the right career path for me? Why is it that what is it that's been true about my experience to this point that leads me to believe that this is the right path? I will tell you, and Taya may have already put this out there, that our events page, where you would find upcoming events, if you scroll to the bottom of our full-time MBA events page, we actually have webinars on 10 or 15 different career paths, an entire hour on why Ross for tech or finance or marketing or social impact or sustainability, healthcare, and more. And so that's going to be really a great opportunity for you to really listen as to how our students have taken advantage of some of the things that Michigan Ross offers to develop that career progression.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Diana, for joining us today and answering all questions. And thank you so much, Taya, for answering basically all questions in chat. I think a lot of our applicants got their questions answered. Even if if you still have questions, we do have the Michigan Raw Zoom breakout at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please join the breakout. Our chat moderators have already posted the Zoom link in the chat window. A huge shout out to our chat moderators who have been moderating the chat throughout. And please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the GMAT Club YouTube channel, because we are coming with many sessions over the next 3 weeks. And thank you so much again, everybody, for joining. Stay safe, stay well. We'll see
Good
you in
luck.
another edition session,
See you
definitely.
soon.